lesson, we'll discuss mechanical settings specifically for pipes. So the example I have on my screen is basically a pipe routing layout or a piping system. Piping systems can be a variety of different types: domestic hot water, cold water, hydronic, sanitary, and other types of plumbing and piping systems. Before you route any of your systems, though, you want to make sure you set up and configure the settings. Revit comes with a variety of preset settings based on standards used by a lot of companies, but again, you should review these to make sure they meet your standard as a company and/or the standards that your customer or clients are using. So to see these standards for piping, let's go to the Systems tab on the ribbon. Then on the Mechanical drop-down, if I click the Mechanical drop-down below Mechanical panel, you'll actually see the Mechanical Settings window appear. Now on the Mechanical Settings window, you have three things at the highest level. One is a hidden line control, basically showing in MEP, regardless of the system, duct or pipe. These are how the lines would be dictated or shown. Now, depending on if you're using a standard for millimeters, metric, or English units, feet and inches, you would see the appropriate unit listed here in the value section. Let's look down, though, under Piping Settings. So go ahead and click Pipe Settings. These are the default values for your pipe system. Below that are angles. This is where you can allow Revit to use any angle within your piping system or specify specific angles to use within that layout. Below angles are conversion, and this is basically defining in the layout of your piping system the main pipeline or any branches coming off of that, the standards that you'll actually use for that pipe type. You're also setting a default offset value as well. The system classification at the top, the drop-down, you can actually see the different types of piping systems that you can configure the main and the branch lines for. Below conversion is segment and sizes. This is where you're defining by material the type of sizes, inside and outside diameter, and where used, piping segments. So you can see on the very top, I have a drop-down for a variety of different types of materials that are used with my piping. Below that is a table listing all of the allowable sizes I can use for the pipe segments. Below segments and sizes are fluids. And again, you have a drop-down on the very top for the different types of fluids and temperatures from which those fluids will flow through your actual pipes. Below fluids are slopes. These are the allowable slopes within your pipe system. And lastly are calculations. Calculations for pressure drop and also for flow when you're running an analysis within your pipe system. Go ahead and click OK. So as a review, in this lesson, we looked at actual pipe settings for an MEP piping system. We talked about how Revit actually comes preloaded with a lot of industry set settings, but again, you should review these settings to make sure they are in line with your company standard and/or the customers you're working with. In this lesson, we'll cover plumbing and piping systems. So a piping system inside of Revit MEP is the essential part of any piping layout that you'll ever create. It basically allows you to separate your pipes into your systems. And those systems and pipes can be grouped by function, by what fluid they cover, what color or material they are. These piping systems belong to an order called a system classification. And these system classes are preset within Revit. For example, one of the system classes could be a domestic piping system, such as your domestic cold water or hot water systems in your home. It could be the sanitary lines, your waste lines. It also could be a fire protection system, such as a fire protection system for dry or other pre-action or wet environments. You can also have mechanical piping systems, such as your hydrolic return and your hydrolic supply lines for your heating and cooling. Again, these are all system classes, and all of your piping systems belong to a class. You can create as many piping systems as you want. You can duplicate the existing ones, but what you can't do is add a new system class. The system classes are predefined. Now, one thing to note, if you do create a new piping system, whatever system class you add it to, it has to remain with that. If you add it to the wrong system class, you'll have to delete your system and recreate it. Let's look at some of the systems that are currently inside of Revit MEP in this example model that I have open. You can see I have a plumbing system laid out on my screen. basically with waste lines from a men and women's restroom. There's also supply lines. You can see those in a red and a blue color. Now, to see some of the actual systems and what is available, let's look at our project browser in the lower left. So in the project browser, I'm going to scroll down till I get to my families. And then inside of families, I'm going to scroll even farther down till I get to piping systems. Go ahead and expand piping systems. And then below the piping system are actually some of these systems that I just mentioned. There's your domestic systems for hot and cold water. You also have your fire protection systems. You also have below that your hydraulic systems. And there's specific systems that may have been duplicated for a specific level if there's differences between level to level within your actual Revit model. And these are just some of the systems within Revit. Again, you can take these, duplicate them, and create your own new systems. So as a review, in this lesson, we briefly talked about plumbing and piping systems. We talked about what the systems contain and what their functions are. Basically, it's a way to manage all of the pipes within a system or systems by class, by material, by what water or what fluid they actually contain. Also, it's a way to actually organize these into different areas within your actual Revit MEP model. In this lesson, we'll discuss adding mechanical equipment to your piping system. Before you actually start laying out your piping system or creating a piping system, the first thing you may want to do is add your mechanical equipment. So if we look at the model that I have on my screen right now, the items in yellow are the mechanical equipment for your piping and also for your HVAC systems. For example, everything in blue is an HVAC system. It's connected to the mechanical equipment in yellow. The green lines you see on your actual screen are the hydraulic piping systems. Those are also connected to the actual mechanical equipment in yellow. So the mechanical equipment here supplies and works with both the actual piping system and the HVAC system. So the first thing you want to do is actually place these components in. Now what we'll do in this example is we'll place two of these yellow components. I can mouse over one of these pieces of the mechanical equipment, pause, and a tooltip will tell me what type of mechanical equipment it is. So basically, I can see here, it's an actual basic heat supply element providing airflow and hydronic water flow to your system. So let's go ahead and place one of these. To do this, let's go to the Systems tab on the ribbon, click Mechanical Equipment in the Mechanical panel. What will open next is the Properties drop-down on the very left, asking you to pick which actual mechanical component you want to place. Well, the one that we just clicked on and we see in yellow on our screen is already highlighted. Basically, it's the horizontal high efficiency 7 to 18 kilowatt left return right discharge unit. And we're going to choose the 11 kilowatt unit. One thing to note before we get started, let's look at the constraint area. Right now, the constraint is based on level 1. Anything I'm placing now from a mechanical standpoint has to be constrained to something. It could be a floor level, it could be a ceiling, it could be a wall, or it could be another system. It could be bound to something, or technically it may not be. But in this case, it is. The other thing to make note of is the offset. So if I'm placing this unit on level 1, I don't want it to sit on the floor, unless, of course, that's what your design dictated. What I would like this to do is be above the floor. Now, if you're using millimeters, about 2,800 millimeters. If I'm using feet, roughly about 9 feet. So the other thing outside of the actual constraints that I may want to note is the rotation after placement. And you can easily rotate this using the rotate tool on the modify bar afterward, or I could check mark rotate after placement on the options panel or options bar right now. Go ahead and select that. Now with that selected, with my level set and my offset value set, I can now move into my model and actually place these actual system elements. So when you click, you'll actually place it. The next thing it's going to prompt you to do is rotate it. So I'm just going to go ahead and left click. And now what I can see is I have the full capability to rotate this actual piece of mechanical equipment. So I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees. Click again. And now I can place another element. So I'm going to move my mouse to the right and place another element over to the right, and I can make it in line with the current one, or I can align it a little later. It's going to go ahead and place another one, and again rotate this one 90 degrees. When I'm done placing these elements, simply click the Modify button on your ribbon. Now let's zoom in around one of these mechanical elements. When you zoom in, you'll see actually little protrusions sticking out. Go ahead and click on the boundary or the outside edge of this mechanical equipment. What you actually see are little dots, or in this case, little pins that allow you to drag or connect various types of system elements. For example, in a previous lesson, we connected our HVAC ductwork. So you can see you have the ability to connect ductwork lines or systems into these actual ports or outlets or connectors. You also have the ability to connect your plumbing lines, and I see one here on the very right, which is an out, gives me a 20 millimeter diameter or dimension. You also have ones on the left where you can actually create systems coming out. There's also the electrical, which we'll cover in another lesson. To deselect this, just click in the background anywhere to deselect the element. Now you may ask, well, why are things yellow, blue, green, magenta, different colors? That has to do with the graphic override within this view. So if you don't have anything selected right now, and the properties area over on the left reads floor plan, click Visibility Graphics and Edit. This will open up the visibility graphics. Right now, I can see on my Model tab, I have an override applied for yellow for any mechanical equipment. That's why my mechanical equipment shows in yellow. If you go to Filters, the very last tab, you can actually see that I have colors predefined, in this case, for my mechanical supply and return and other systems to display within my actual Revit model. You can go through and actually update or change any of these elements, overriding the default value for that actual view. All right, now those were mechanical. If I look at my filter list, I could turn on piping, and I could see all of my piping elements and all of the overrides for piping. Here I see the pipe fittings and pipes are green for lines. So that's what dictates the green color for my lines within my piping. Go ahead and click OK. So in this lesson, what we looked at was how to add mechanical equipment to our actual Revit model. We talked about before we start creating the piping system, let's first create the mechanical equipment from which our pipes will run from element to element or mechanical equipment to mechanical equipment. We then looked at why certain elements are certain colors, yellow, blue, green. We looked at the visibility graphics of this actual view and looked at the overrides applied to these different elements and components, dictating why they were yellow, blue, or green. In this lesson, we'll cover adding placeholder pipes. So you may ask, what is a placeholder pipe? A placeholder pipe is very similar to a regular pipe or normal pipe, with a few differences though. Those differences are these placeholder pipes are drawn as single lines. They're primarily meant to be used in conceptual design. So they don't have some other things as well. They don't have the ability to actually align vertical or horizontal, and they don't have the ability to add linings or insulation. But these placeholder pipes can actually be converted into a regular pipe. So when you use a placeholder pipe, you still pick the type of pipe and the material and the settings, but again, it's mostly used for conceptual design. So to place a placeholder pipe or a pipe placeholder, let's go to your Systems tab on the ribbon. Then in the Plumbing and Piping panel, click Pipe Placeholder. Now, I can start either by clicking a point in one of my existing pipelines or segments, or I can click a point on one of my mechanical units where the pipe would be connected. I'm going to start by clicking on one of the existing pipelines. Now I'll just move to a nearest point. Go ahead and select. It'll attach that pipeline segment to that point, and you can start dragging your mouse and you'll see the line segment for this pipeline being created. Now you could click and start to actually design or lay out the turns and bends of the pipe, or you can let Revit calculate that from point A to point B, or from where you click to where you click again. And we'll use that method. So the point that I want to end up at is the bottom protrusion point of my mechanical equipment box. So looking at the 4 actual protrusions sticking out on the left side of that yellow box, pick the very bottom one. You'll actually see a circle and an X through it, indicating that is a connection point. There will also be a tooltip up here telling you what type of pipe connection can be applied to that. When you see that tooltip or the actual constraint or snap for point, go ahead and left click on it. This will draw the actual placement pipe from the point we first clicked to this last point that we clicked. Now, I could have set a slope or a slope value before I actually drew this pipe segment. To do that, if I wanted to, on the ribbon in the upper right, I have slope piping. Right now, there's no slope. Slope is off. But you could set an up or a down slope, specifically if you're doing different type of sanitary lines or waste lines. But here, if I did choose up or down, I can set a slope value. Now these values are predefined in the actual pipe settings. For this example though, let's just choose no slope. Over on the left, in the pipe properties area, you can see you have a variety of pipe options, just like you would if you normally drew a normal pipe. We have a reference level, so this pipe was referenced to level 1. The offset from level 1 is 2400 millimeters, roughly about 8.5 feet. Now I can set this information here, or I could have set it on the options bar across the top. The diameter of the pipe that I'm applying is 20 millimeters. You could change that as well too. And you have all the other information as well, minus a few things, but all the other information that you would see within a normal pipe if you created it. Things you don't see are, again, the actual alignment tools for horizontal and vertical, and the ability to add insulation and lining to the actual pipe. Once you're done selecting or drawing a pipeline segment, click Modify. So as a review, in this lesson, we looked at how to create a pipe placeholder. We talked about what is a pipe placeholder and how does it vary from a normal pipe. Mostly that pipe placeholder is used in conceptual design, where it's drawn as a singular line, and it has a few less properties. But that singular line for the pipe placeholder can always be converted into a normal pipe. That pipe can be applied with fixtures, slope, and other various settings. In this lesson, we'll cover adding pipes. There are several different methods on how to add a pipe in your pipe system. One is you can add a pipe into an existing pipe segment. Another is you can add a pipe to a point on a mechanical element. You can also convert pipe placeholders into pipes. We'll look at that last method first. On your screen, you actually have a pipe placeholder. It's the singular line. Now, that pipe placeholder has properties, and it's of a specific pipe type. Therefore, we need to just convert it to a pipe. So to convert the pipe placeholder into a pipe, you first need to select it. So let's choose all three lines that you see within this pipe placeholder line element. With all three selected, on your ribbon to the right, choose Convert Placeholder. This will then ask you, depending upon the mechanical equipment it's connected to, what system is this associated with? Well, this is associated to the Hydrolic Return To system. So just click OK with that selected. Now, depending on the number of pipes you had selected, those will actually convert to a pipe. If you have a line segment that doesn't convert, simply select it again and then choose Convert Placeholder. This will then update all of those pipe placeholder lines into actual pipes. It also produces the actual fittings for which they connect into other pipe segments. Now, another method is to just draw a pipe or create a pipe using the pipe command. The pipe tool is on the Systems tab of the ribbon. So let's go to the Systems tab, then to the Plumbing and Piping panel, and choose Pipe. Now, first thing to note, when you're ready to create this pipe, let's look at the properties. Properties on the left will ask you or show what type of pipe you would like to use, your pipe type. Below that is your justification. How are you justifying based on the points you pick? What is your reference level and what is the offset from that reference level? Now this information can also be set on the options bar at the top, including the pipe diameter. Now at this point, I could start to click anywhere on my screen to draw a pipe segment. I could also click an existing pipe segment, or I can click a point on my mechanical equipment to actually tie the pipe segment into. For this example, let's start drawing a pipe simply by just choosing a point on this upper pipe segment that already exists. So just go ahead and click. And as you click, you can see you can start to drag your mouse and produce this pipe segment. Now I can click and start to create a routing pattern, or you can actually start to drag toward another point, in this case on my mechanical equipment, the yellow box on the right. So I click one point to make a segment, which there'll be a fitting place at that segment based on my rules or my pipe settings. And I move my mouse over one of the protrusions on the left side of that yellow box, that actual mechanical equipment. That actually is a point allowing me to connect a pipe into this mechanical element. So with the little magenta circle next depicted showing me that snap point, go ahead and pick it or left click. It'll then ask me, well, of the connectors that are on this side, there's technically 4, but one is already used for the pipe we converted. Here are the other 3. Which one do you want to use? Well, I want to use this second one, the actual connector 2, hydronic return, round 20 millimeter. With it selected, just click OK. It will then route that pipe into that pipe point based on default settings that you had set within your system settings for piping systems. Now I'm still in the piping command, and I still could continue to draw segments of pipe. To exit out of the piping command, simply click the Modify button on the ribbon on the left. So as a review, in this lesson we looked at adding pipes. We looked at how we can convert a pipe placeholder into a pipe, and then we also looked at how we can actually create a pipe using the pipe tool. We looked at how we can draw a pipe from a pipe segment that already exists into a point of a mechanical element. In this lesson, we'll cover parallel pipes. What is a parallel pipe, or what is the parallel pipe tool? Well, the parallel pipe tool allows you to make a pipe parallel to another existing pipe, either horizontally or vertically, and you can create a number of pipes horizontally or vertically for one side or the other of the pipe you select. You can also set the offset distance from that original pipe. So to use the parallel pipe tool, let's go to the Systems tab on the ribbon, and then in the Plumbing and Pipe area of the ribbon, choose Parallel Pipes. Now before you select any pipes, look at the right side of your ribbon. On the right side of your ribbon, it's going to ask you, well, how many pipes do you want to make horizontally to the one you select? How many do you want to make vertically to the one you select? Now the one you select is also included in this number. So when it says vertical 1, you're really not creating any parallel pipe because 1 is the one you're selecting. When it says horizontal 2, that means you're making another pipe in addition to the one you select, so you end up having 2. The offset distance is just the distance from the original pipe. So looking at my configuration now, I'm going to offset one pipe horizontally to itself, one side or the other, depending on where I place my mouse, at a distance of 304.8 millimeters. So to illustrate this, all I have to do now is mouse over a pipe. As you can see where I hold my mouse, I see a dashed line representing the new pipe that's going to be placed parallel. So depending on what side I move my mouse to of the existing pipe, that parallel line will appear on one side or the other. I'm going to pull it to the nearest side or near me, and then just left click. That creates a parallel pipe horizontally to itself on the side I chose at an offset distance of 304.8 millimeters. Now let's change the horizontal to 1, then change the vertical to 2. Now when I do this and I move over a pipe, I'm going to see the pipe is actually placed vertically above itself or below itself, depending on where you're at over the pipe. Again, you can choose a different pipe or use the same pipe that I just selected. When I select this, it'll actually place that pipe at that given distance above or below that current pipe segment. To end the command, simply click Modify on the actual ribbon. So in this lesson, we looked at creating parallel pipes. Parallel pipes are used to make pipes parallel to themselves, horizontally or vertically, at a specific distance from the original pipe. You can make multiple pipes offset horizontally and vertically as well. In this lesson, we'll cover modifying pipes. So if we want to modify a pipe, let's first select a pipe within one of our systems. I'm just going to choose a pipe on the right. Now when I choose this pipe on the right, I see a variety of options on the ribbon to the upper right. One is I have slope. I can apply a slope rule to this specific pipe or pipe segment. If I'm drawing pipes and I do have a slope rule already applied, I could choose to ignore it if it's not allowing me to connect the pipe based on that rule. You can also add insulation, and I also can change my duct piping size for the various method and constraints that are applied to this pipe. And click Cancel. Now if you select, let's say, 2 pipes or 3 pipes that are aligned together, you can actually choose the alignment or how they're justified. If I click Justify on the ribbon, I'm presented with which system to choose. And then in the upper left, I'm also asked, how would you like to justify these? This is also the same information you'll actually see in the Properties window for that pipe. Right now, mine are aligned middle center. Then click Cancel. And I can see now in the Properties area, they're also aligned middle center. Now, another thing you may want to do is change the actual properties of the pipe. So if you click on a pipe, the properties will be on the left. This is where I could change the offset, the level, the system that it's associated with or not, the pipe segments, or any other values that are displayed here that I may want to update or change. You also have the ability to edit the pipe. In this case, I can come in and change my routing preferences if I want to, or duplicate this pipe type and make a new pipe type. Click Cancel. And click in the background anywhere to deselect. You also can modify the physical pipe by moving it. For example, if I select the vertical pipe, I actually have drag handles on each end. Moving over any one of those, holding the left mouse button down, will allow me to drag that pipe to a new position and ultimately disconnect that pipe if I only choose that one segment. Now I can always drag that pipe back to its vertical position, and I can also drag it back into alignment or connect it back to a point in its original configuration with the pipe that it was once connected to. In this lesson, we looked at different ways to modify pipes. We looked at ways to modify the data of pipes. We looked at ways to modify the physical characteristics of pipes and to actually move pipes. In this lesson, we'll cover adding pipe accessories. So you may ask, well, what is a pipe accessory? Well, a pipe accessory could be a valve, could be a temperature gauge, could be a pressure gauge. And we also have pipe fittings. Those could be an elbow or an end cap. So let's look at both of those examples here within our Revit project. I'm going to zoom in the upper left corner of my current Revit project, and what you'll notice is I have a pipe run coming out from the main pipe system, and it just stops abruptly. Well, what we want to do with this pipe is actually put an end cap on the end of it, and once we do that, we actually like to drop in a valve. So we'll use the pipe fitting and the pipe accessory tools to do both. So let's go to the Systems tab on your ribbon, and then in the Plumbing and Pipe panel, first we'll click Pipe Fitting. Now, if you don't have any pipe fittings preloaded, Revit will prompt you to load a family of pipe fittings. You can also do that right now if you wanted to. Click Load Family and load additional families. However, in this Revit project, we already have the families loaded that we need for this example. So I'm going to use the MCAP generic standard end cap to place on the end of this pipe. So basically what I need to do once I select the actual property of what I'm using is to mouse over the actual center line of the pipe, and then I will move out to the end and snap this off of the end of the actual pipe itself. When you see a position like you see on my screen, simply click that object snap, and what will happen is Revit will snap that pipe fitting to the end of the pipe segment. Click Modify. Now another example is to place a pipe accessory. So the pipe accessory is right below pipe fitting. Let's go ahead and click Pipe Accessory. And again, in the Properties area on the left, I have my accessories listed. For this example, we're using the ball valve 2-inch. So I'll just verify that I have the 2-inch ball valve selected because that's equivalent to the actual pipe diameter. 50 millimeters is 2 inches. So again, same as you did with the pipe fitting, the pipe accessory is placed the same way. Move your mouse over the pipe until you see the actual center line. When you see the center line, go ahead and left click. This will add that pipe accessory into the actual pipe line or pipe segment, making the appropriate cuts for that accessory to be added. And again, I can continue to place more if I choose, or simply click Modify. Now the accessories, depending upon the symbol, do have tools to actually flip the orientation, in this case of the handle if I wanted to. And I also have the drag tool, or the drag marks, to actually move the actual location of this or the fittings off of each end. To see this in 3D, let's scroll down to your 3D plans and double click on the typical WSHP 3D view, and then zoom in. This will show the actual two elements we just added. One, the end cap, which is a pipe fitting, and two, the actual valve, which is a pipe accessory. So as a review in this lesson, we looked at adding pipe accessories and pipe fittings. We talked about the differences between the pipe fitting and pipe accessories, and we talked about the method of how to actually add those. We also mentioned how to load additional components or fittings or accessories if they're currently not in your Revit project. In this lesson, we'll cover pipe systems. So before you start to actually build your layout of different pipes and components of your pipes, whether that be fitting or accessories, you need to define a pipe system. The pipe system is technically the glue that holds everything together. It's also needed for analysis. Basically, it'll analyze everything in that system or what belongs to that system. So to create a system, I need to first create at least one piece of equipment or a mechanical element. That way I can start to build that mechanical system, in this case, the piping system. I can add everything to it first, or I can add things to it as I go. So on my screen, I've actually added two more additional mechanical elements. If I mouse over each one, you'll see the mechanical equipment element on the left has been added and the one on the right has been added. Currently, they don't belong to a system. They're just floating. And I'm going to use those two as an example to add a new system. To bring up the system browser, go to the View tab on your ribbon, then all the way to the right to User Interface, and checkmark System Browser. This will turn on the system browser. On the system browser, Verify View is set to Systems, and set the secondary category for discipline to Piping. This will list all piping systems and anything not assigned to a piping system. So currently right now I see I have 8 piping systems. The one we're going to add is going to be an additional hydronic supply system. So it's going to be listed under the hydronic supply that I have highlighted on my screen. So to do this, all we have to do is simply highlight the components, or in this case, the mechanical equipment that we want to add to this new system. So I'm going to window these in. I'm just going to drag a window from left to right around the 2 yellow elements that currently do not belong to any system. Now, if you accidentally grab more than what you want, you can use the filter button to filter out all the elements that you don't want. Or just simply hold the Control key and select both of these pieces of mechanical equipment. Now, once you do this, and if these do not belong to a system, on the ribbon to the very right, you'll have a Systems panel. This will ask you what type of system do you want to create. Given these pieces of mechanical equipment can have all 3 systems, duct, power, and piping, I have the choice to create one of all 3, or all 3. In this instance here, I'm just going to choose piping. What will happen next is Revit is going to ask us, well, what type of system do you want to add? In this case, I'm going to add a hydronic supply system. And as you can see, you can choose different ones if you want to. I'm going to name the system just so it stands out, Hydronic Supply 100. Now I can open this in the system browser right now if I want to in the editor to add additional things to it, but I'm not going to. I'll show you how to actually do that in a separate step. So with these set, just click OK. It's going to ask me now, based on the connectors on each of these units, which one do you want to use? Well, I'm going to use connector 1 on the hydronic supply, round 20mm pipe. Click OK. And I'm going to use the same one on the other unit. Click OK. What that will do is add these 2 elements, in this case, these 2 pieces of mechanical equipment, to the hydronic supply 100 system. And I see this now in my system browser on the right. And I can expand it, and you'll actually see both of those elements that were added to the system browser. Now, if you wanted to add additional elements to the actual system, this is where you can edit the system. So if I click on the Hydronic Supply 100 system, on the ribbon in System Tools, I could choose Edit System. Doing so will bring up a new ribbon allowing me to add new elements to the system. Currently, I don't have any additional ones to add, but if I were to add additional mechanical equipment, I could add them to this existing system. Just cancel in this example. So as a review, in this lesson, what we looked at is how to create piping systems. We talked about the importance of a piping system as it's the glue that holds everything together within that system. We talked about creating first a component or a mechanical element, at least one or a few, that we can use to add to that piping system. Once those are added to the system, we can add additional ones by editing the system. And we also looked at the system in the system browser. In this lesson, we'll cover creating automatic pipe layouts. So once you have your pipe system created and your mechanical equipment for your pipe system, the next step is to actually lay out your pipes. Now you could lay these out manually by choosing a pipe and then adding segments from one point to another point. You can also use a pipe placeholder, basically a conceptual way of laying out the pipes and then later on converting those pipes. Now, the other way is to do an automatic pipe layout. By choosing the system would contain mechanical components or other piping components, and the system would choose or present optional routes of how to route the pipe from one point to another point. The way to go about this first is to display the system browser. If you do not see the system browser as you see on my screen, you can view it by going to the View tab on the ribbon all the way to the right to the User Interface dropdown, and then checkmark System Browser. This will turn on the System Browser. Verify Systems is selected in the view, and then Piping is selected for this one. This will just show Piping Systems. Now, the piping system that we want to use to route in this example is the Hydrolic Supply 100 system. Basically, it only contains the two pieces of mechanical equipment that you see on your screen, surrounded by the dashed lines. We want to route piping from one unit to the other unit. So to do this, go ahead and select the Hydrolic Supply 100 system. Then on your ribbon in the Layout panel, you have two options, to lay out pipes or to lay out the placeholder pipes. Again, the placeholder pipes are just singular lines used to actually conceptually lay out your pipes. They can be converted to full pipes or regular pipes at a later point. In this example, though, we're going to use Generate Layout. So when you click Generate Layout, the ribbon changes and it's presenting you now with solutions. And you have solution types. And you can see on your screen, it's routing pipes now from one unit to the other unit in one of three options, and this being the first option. If I hit the right arrow for my next solution, it will show me another route. Hit the arrow again to see another route. And as you can see, you have different options of different types of solutions for routing your pipes from one point to another point. The Settings tab actually controls the main and branch lines of what the offsets would be from the level they're bound to or referenced at. So 2,750 millimeters, roughly about 8.5 feet. Go ahead and click OK. And you also can apply slope value. Slope value if I needed to slope these pipes from one point to another point. You can also change the solution type to perimeter and intersections. Again, changing these will give me different options. So for perimeter, I have a value that I can set. It'll actually route the pipes based on these values. And again, I have different options of what I'll be given or presented with based on what I want to choose. Once you have an actual route that you like, that you want to use, you can accept it. You can also use the Edit Layout button all the way on the left of the ribbon to actually modify this current route. And again, once you find the route that you like, simply click Finish Layout. Once you click Finish Layout, the pipes will be generated in their full realistic mode, routed from one point to another point within your system. If I zoom in, I can actually see these pipes are the real pipes drawn at the full scale with all of the attributes and all the parameters of full piping. So as a review, in this lesson, we looked at a way to automatically route pipes from one point to another point. We talked about the different ways to create piping, the manual process, and the process we looked at in this example, automatically creating pipes. Basically selecting your pipe system and then choosing to automatically lay out the pipes And then Revit will calculate solutions and present those solutions to you of how it interprets routing the pipe from one point to another point. You cycle through the solutions and then choose the one you want.